A lot has happened since we've joined you guys this past weekend. Obviously, there were a few upsets this past weekend. Also, we had a major coaching change at one of the premier schools in the SEC. We will discuss all of that and be joined off the top of the show by Chris Low to get the lowdown on the South Carolina job and moving forward. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we get you guys caught up on all of the college football news and look back at an exciting past weekend only on the Stingray Show.
The Dogs and Stingray are coming for you!
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn. Worst fans ever!
So without further ado, here is the biggest Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes.
Here we go, guys. Dogs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings, he's got it. Jennings, he's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee. They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium. Are you kidding me? My God almighty. What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry to end this game. What a play! Wow!
Welcome inside another exciting edition of the Stingray Show, everybody. I am your host, Stephen Ray, and let me go on ahead and bring up my co-host, Heath. Heath, how's it going, my friend?
Stephen, how are you today?
I'm doing good, and man, there's been a lot of news since we last spoke with everybody.
Lots of big news, a lot of changing, and we've asked every reporter on the show this season so far, will the coaching carousel get started? And everyone told us no, but it looks like that's going to be changing.
Absolutely. So let's go on ahead and bring in our very special guest off the top of the show. Here is Chris Low from ESPN. Chris, how's it going, my friend?
It's going great. It's good to be with you guys.
Thank you so much. And first off, let me just ask, how did you get the news that South Carolina was going to part ways with Will Muschamp?
I first heard about it right after the Ole Miss game, late that night, that the powers that be of South Carolina were moving in that direction to make a change. That I think ultimately it was a move that the president of the university, Robert Castle, decided that they just were going to move forward. But Muschamp wasn't the guy, and over in the middle of the pandemic, they owed him. I'm told they owe him over $15 million. Now, there have been different figures out there, but that they didn't want to go forward. They wanted to go ahead and make a change, and I think as they went through the day and bounced it off different people, that they knew that's because sometimes you're emotional after a game like that. You give up 700 yards and 59 points, but you step back, and I think once they stepped back and conferred with everybody, they felt like that's what they wanted to do, and told them late that afternoon or early that evening.
Well, let me go ahead and ask this now: do you think if they were victorious in Oxford, do you think that they would have postponed maybe letting him go, or was that the final straw?
No, I don't think they would have fired him had they won that game. I think that was sort of the, you never fire a guy because of just one game. But I think that was, to use your terminology, was the sort of the final straw. I mean, if you go back to the Gamecocks' loss to end the 2018 season, they lost to Virginia in the Belk Bowl.
Yes.
They've lost 14 of their last 20 games. So it really was a culmination of things. And
right.
The defense had been really bad the last 4 games. And offensively, they've struggled. They just haven't really been able to get up to speed consistently. And so there are a number of things there that I think the brass at South Carolina looked at. And And to get just beaten that badly and give up that many yards, I know the president was upset. They said, you know what, he's not the guy, right or wrong. Let's go ahead and make the change right now.
Right.
Chris, have you been hearing anything this season leading up to this game? I mean, we all heard the rumblings about this, but have you heard anything personally there in the South Carolina issue that, hey, you know, we're getting closer to this?
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of restlessness among the fans for a while now. I mean, you
Right.
go back to, as I said, the last 3 or 4 games, it's, you know, you kept hearing, like, you know, is he going to make it? You know, he's not the guy. The offense is antiquated. But I think the tipping point was the defense has really struggled. You know, and that's Will's background. His background is defense. And to get just absolutely carved apart that way against Ole Miss was, I think, the kind of thing that just, even those who wanted to wait and said, you know what, let's wait and see if we can get this thing turned around. I think that was the tipping point, and everybody just sort of aligned and said, let's go ahead and make the change now. And everybody says, why you do it now and not wait 3 or 4 games? And I understand that thinking, but if you also feel like other schools are going to make a change, and I think probably invariably there will be another change. You know, I don't know if it's in the SEC or if it's other schools. Even in a pandemic, we've seen that schools are willing to pay obscene amount of money or dollar figures if they think they can get the right coach. So if you think that's going to happen, then you try to get a jump on those schools and position yourselves to try to hire the guy you feel like is going to be the right fit for you.
With that, I'd like to follow up with this, Chris. Is there another school in the SEC that's going to jump on the carousel to put themselves in the running for maybe a coach that South Carolina might be pursuing?
Well, I think the three most likely to make changes, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you said right now, Chris, who are the 3 that you think could possibly make changes, I would say, in no order, Tennessee, Auburn, and Vanderbilt.
Right.
All are schools that could potentially make a change, depending on what happens the rest of the year. Now, you know, Pruitt, like at Tennessee, like Muschamp at South Carolina, is owed about $11 million, $11 to $12 million. Malzahn is a trickier deal. They would owe him about $21 or $22 million. And I think $11 million of that is payable within 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
So it's not like you could space that out over 4 years. You got to come up with $11 million within 2 or 3 months. So that one's dicier. But I also think there's a group there at Auburn that have been looking for a chance, any chance, to get rid of Malzahn. And to Gus's credit, he's always won enough games or won the right games. I mean, nobody's beaten Saban more than he has
Right.
the last few years. And, you know, so he's always been able to stave that off. So we'll see what happens this year. Gus has been, again, he's been quite the survivor. Pruitt at Tennessee's in his 3rd year. Is that enough time to really assess whether a coach can get it done, especially in a COVID year? Probably not. But Tennessee's, I mean, no one's fired coaches every 3 or 4 years like Tennessee has. It's just sort of in a revolving door. Mason at Vanderbilt, if they go 0-10, that's a hard job. And I think Derek's one of those guys that's a good football coach, but just hasn't been able to replicate what James Franklin did there. And the reality is, in our lifetime, we may never see.
And we lost Chris for some reason.
I'm back. Never seen anybody in our lifetime
Chris.
level that Franklin did at Vanderbilt.
Yes.
So,
Hey,
but 0-10, it's sort of hard.
Chris, I was going to ask you real quick. Hugh Freeze has been a good friend of the show. We actually have a little bit of a Liberty following since he's been on the show a couple of times. With that being said, we've had Southern Miss people drive us crazy, asking us, is Hugh Freeze coming to Hattiesburg? And now Liberty people are driving us crazy, or why are we even asking the question? So with everything you know, I think we all know Hugh Freeze's name is probably on that short list at South Carolina. Do you think?
Well, Hugh's name will be on a lot of short lists. And, you know, he's not going to Southern Miss. That's his alma mater, but he's not going there. Nor should he. Why do you go to Southern Miss?
Yes.
And you got it rolling at Liberty the way he does. And listen, Liberty has great facilities. And the new deal that he just agreed to, they're going to pay him an average of about $3.2 or $3.3 million a year. So why do you walk away from that unless it's a Power 5 job that you feel like you can win at a high level.
Right.
Is South Carolina that job? I don't know. I think he would have to sit down and think about that. But clearly he will be on their list. He would be on Tennessee's list if they make a change. He'd be on Auburn's list if they make a change. Other schools outside the SEC. I mean, he's done a terrific job at Liberty. Yeah, he's got baggage. Everybody knows that. But he was out of coaching for 2 years. He left the SEC, which he was asked to do, or I shouldn't say asked to do. The commissioner, Greg Sankey, said, listen,
Right.
I want you to leave the SEC before you and go somewhere else, not have any more issues. And if that happens, you'll be allowed to come back to the SEC if somebody wants to hire you. And that's what he's done. He had any more issues. He's won at a high level. I mean, look at the job he's done with the quarterback there, Malik Willis. I mean, Malik Willis is playing – I mean, you can make a case he's playing about as well as the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in college football right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to be a commodity for a lot of schools. But I don't think he's just going to leave to go somewhere. It's going to have to be a fit, and he feels like a place, A, that he wants to live, that his family would be comfortable living, and a place that he feels like he can win at a high level. Is Tennessee that place? Is South Carolina that place? I guess we'll wait and see. It's nice, though, given where Hugh's been and what he's gone through, and listen, be honest, what he's put himself through, to have options.
Right. We've heard the story before with Hugh Freeze on his honeymoon. He breaks into Neyland Stadium there in Knoxville and promises his wife, he said, one day, we're going to be doing this. How fitting would it be if it is Tennessee? But do you really think Tennessee's going to make a move this season?
Well, Hughes told me that story, and Tennessee certainly is a school that he has long, or a job he has long looked at and said, boy, that would be awesome to have that job. We all have, in life, we all have positions or jobs or teams that we, going all the way back, that we look at and say, man, that would be a great place to work or a great place to coach, what have you. And I think Tennessee has sort of been that place for Hugh. But I don't know if Tennessee's going to make a change. Now, I think all bets are off if Tennessee were to lose out and lose to Vanderbilt. I think that would probably be the surest way for them to, to fire Jeremy and be looking for a new coach. But I don't think it's just one game. How does Tennessee play down the stretch? Do they compete? Do they play with heart? Does it look like some young guys are getting better? All those are questions, I think, if you're Philip Fulmer, or maybe it goes ahead higher than Philip Fulmer, that they want to look at and see if this is indeed the guy that you feel like can take your program forward. Because they have recruited pretty well under Jeremy. But that's at some point that's got to translate on the field. You can't lose by 30 points at home to Kentucky. Right. You can't be uncompetitive against the teams at Tennessee you got to beat, which is Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. So those are all things I think that the brass at Tennessee is going to be watching as the Vols go forward this year.
Well, let me ask you this. Moving outside of the SEC, now that South Carolina has made the move, where do you feel like we stand with the Jim Harbaughs at Michigan and guys like that?
Well, Auburn owes Gus a ton of money. I think Michigan may owe Harbaugh even more.
Right.
If they so you talk about being married to a guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, look at it from Michigan's perspective. Okay, if you're a Michigan fan, a dyed-in-the-wool, maize-and-blue guy or gal, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And you went back a few years ago. I mean, let's sort of rewind back. And I was actually at Harbaugh's first game at Michigan. I was out in Utah. I was at that game. I was out doing a story on Taysom Hill at BYU, and so went over to Utah to cover that game. And I remember going over to the team hotel, earlier that day, or maybe it was the day before, and talking to all the Michigan fans. I mean, it was nirvana. You could not find a school. I would say this. You could not find a school more united in the guy they hired than Michigan when they hired Jim Harbaugh. I mean, there was nobody that was not on the Harbaugh train that was a Wolverine fan, donor, booster, anybody. So if he's not the guy and he can't get it done, who is the guy? I mean, that's a pretty daunting position right now if you're in Michigan. That if he just can't get it done, not to say that nobody else can, but they put all their eggs in the Harbaugh basket. And to this point, I mean, it's not like he's been terrible. He's won some games and had some decent seasons, but he certainly hadn't beaten Ohio State. And this year to start the way they have for a school with the resources and the tradition of Michigan is just unacceptable.
Chris, I've always loved your work. I've been reading your stuff for a while now. Who are some names in the industry that you enjoy reading and guys that you read that if you know they say it, it's just their word is solid gold? It happened.
Well, it ends and begins with my buddy Mark Slabaugh. Slabaugh, he might be a Georgia grad, so we won't hold that against him. But I think Mark's as good a combined reporter or writer as there is in the business. And we go back, gosh, I guess we go back 25 years when he was working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and I was working for the Tennessean in Nashville. This is pre-internet, so we would swap notes and quotes and what's going on at Tennessee, what's going on at Georgia, what do you hear at Alabama, South Carolina. Of course, now with cell phones, internet, all those days are over. But I think Mark's is as good as it gets. I mean, there's so many people around the country that I admire, and my and I'm not just being ESPN centric here, but Ivan Maisel, who unfortunately is not going to be with us anymore starting in January. I don't know if there's anybody that knows the history of college football and can tell that history as well as Ivan can. I mean, and just so well respected among coaches, among administrators, among people in my business, and can write columns on deadline. I always admire people when you've got about 40 minutes to write a column after a late game. And I don't know how many times I've been in a game with Ivan, whether it's Alabama or Georgia or LSU, and one of these night games, one of these 8 o'clock CBS games. And then I read his column later that night that he's had about 40 minutes or 45 minutes to do it. And I'm like, how in the world could he turn something like that, that kind of prose in such a short period of time? So he's Pat Forty, Bruce Feldman are all just outstanding. Ross Dellinger, I think, who's also at SI is outstanding. There's so many people, and even at my shop, I mean, I've been so blessed to work with so many good people. Heather Dinich, Andrea Adelson, Adam Rittenberg. I mean, I go back to the blog days, when we were doing the blogs. That's when I got hired at ESPN in 2007. A year later, they started the blog network. And Heather and Adam are the only two people besides me that are still left that did blogs. And none of us got any sleep. We were working from 7 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night because we were cranking out all these blog stories. But I've got a ton of respect for Adam and Heather and Andrea Adelson, who came on, I guess, a year later to do the ACC blog. But I tell you what, if you ask me who can write the best long-form story, even stories that are really long and it may take you 30 minutes to read them, I don't think any better than Wright Thompson. Wright he could go out and write about a nomad, or he could write about some guy who's traveling the country who's got nothing to do with sports, and I think I'd sit down and read it.
You mentioned about the layoffs there at ESPN. Were there a couple of shockers there to you? They're like, wow, they let them go. What were your thoughts? And I mean, was it elation that you weren't on the chopping block and you made it through?
You know what? No, it was more how heartbroken I was for all the awesome people. I'll start there. People, journalists second, that aren't going to be with us anymore. I think that was honestly what hurt the most. I mean, yeah, you're relieved that you still got a job, but in our profession, it can end any time. It's a very tenuous type of profession, and in a COVID climate, really any of us right now that are in the entertainment, quote, media business, you're blessed for every day you have. But I was more just, not upset, but heartbroken, sorry to see people that had put so much of their heart and soul into a job. And I'm talking about people behind the scenes, people in production, people that I've gotten to know, editors, writers. It's tough, and we're not the only ones at ESPN to feel it. Others have, and I think others probably will. But that's the thing I thought about the most, is that all these people that have families and had a long history of doing something at a really high level, they're out of work.
Mm-hmm. Chris, getting back to football and things this season, what's been one of the shockers to you, good and bad, that you've seen so far in 2020?
Good is with the job that Sam Pittman's done at Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a team that lost 20 straight SEC games. They're playing 4 or 5 walk-ons or former walk-ons. And, they've won a few games and really could have won. I mean, the Auburn game, the call that went against them, I mean, that was a bad call. They could have easily won that game. But, they're right in position. And certainly if you give them that, they're right in position to be a 500 team or better. And who would have thought that before the season? I certainly didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam has been smart enough to surround himself with good coaches and good people. Barry Odom, his defensive coordinator, Kendall Braz, his offensive coordinator. They're a little bit different on offense. And Kendall's done a terrific job with Felipe Franks and what they've asked him to do. And those kids, man, have bought in. I mean, they have bought into Sam Pittman, who he is, what he is, have played hard and played with confidence. It's been a lot of fun to see Arkansas sort of pick itself up off the deck and play with such pride this season. So that would be a surprise on the good. Bad, it to see Florida State continue to struggle.
Yeah.
That proud program.
Yeah.
Is clearly everything's not well there. For those of us my age that are in their 50s, I mean, you think about all those years. What's the stat that Bobby Bowden went? Was it 14 or 15 straight years and was ranked in the top 5?
Yeah,
something like that. You know what? That'll never happen again in my lifetime. We'll never see that. And people say, "What about it? Saban in Alabama?" Alabama hasn't done it. You go back to 2010, they lost 3 football games.
Yes.
So even in this incredible run by Nick at Alabama, they haven't done that.
Yeah.
So when I think of Florida State, I think of that. I think of that run, which makes it all the more difficult and head scratching to see just sort of how far that program has fallen.
Right.
And it's been a couple of different coaches. And I know everybody wants to dump it on Jimbo Fisher. Well, he didn't leave him anything. Listen, Jimbo Fisher won a national title there in 2013. And a couple of years after that, he had good football teams. Now, the last year was not a good year. But it's just, to me, it's too convenient to dump everything at his feet for what's happened there.
And Chris, I've got one final question for you from me. With this talk of all the coaching hot seat, would it be foolish of me or crazy of me to even possibly put the seat getting a little bit warm for Kirby Smart in Athens? Because of what they did, because they couldn't win and could not perform well against Florida 2 weekends ago.
No, I don't think his seat's hot because he's recruited too well, and he's been, they're still an elite team. They're still one of the elite top 10, top 12 teams in college football. And they won an SEC title in 2017. They were a miraculous pass away from winning the national title in 2017. If you're going to win it, what's the old cliche? And I'm sorry to use this, but if you're going to catch the great white shark, you got to be fishing in those waters.
Yes.
Georgia's swimming in those waters right now. They've been pretty close. And I know they got steamrolled last year in the SEC championship game by LSU, but LSU steamrolled everybody last year.
Right.
But they were there, so they played it in 19. They won it in 17. They were a miraculous pass away from winning the national title in 17. So no, I'm not ready to put Kirby on the hot seat. He's recruiting too well. Now, I'm like everybody else. How do they get in a position where they're this limited at quarterback as well as they've recruited everywhere else? I'll say this, and I know Georgia fans don't want to hear this and they cringe, but you take the guy that's putting up Heisman Trophy numbers now at Ohio State, who was once on campus in Athens, and you put him on that roster right now at Georgia would be number 1 in the country right now.
Yep.
Yeah. You're right. Chris, my final questions for you. Plain and simple. how many coaching vacancies will be filled this year in the offseason in the SEC? We know we got one so far. What do you think? How many will there be?
I'd say there'll probably be at least one more,
Okay.
And because think about this, one way or the other, whether it's somebody else getting fired or somebody else around college football retires, in a big time job or goes to the pros, and then maybe there's a domino effect that somebody in the SEC leaves to go take that job. I know it sounds crazy in a pandemic to think there's going to be more movement, but my sense, and having covered this league for a long time, is that Muschamp's firing won't be the last move we see one way or the other in the SEC this year.
Yeah. And I'll wrap it up with this. We asked Mark Schlabach this. We asked Tony Barnhart this question as well. How much longer is Nick Saban doing it?
For as long as he wants to. Probably we'll all be retired and Nick will still be coaching. And I've asked him that, and he always says, his response to me is always the same: what the hell else am I going to do? And I mean, he loves recruiting, he loves coaching, he loves being on the practice. He loves more than anything else in the world is being on the practice field.
Yes.
That is his sanctuary. Being on the practice field and going over there and coaching the defensive backs and throwing passes and then walking around the field and overseeing special teams. I mean, that's the part he loves. Mm-hmm. He loves evaluating players. He loves watching tape. He loves getting on the plane and going to see players, talking to them. So I think until he just decides that he's not in that anymore, that's not who he is. He wants to do something else. But I don't think we're close to that. But, if there's an upheaval in college sports or there's an administrative upheaval there at Alabama, then I think all bets are off. If there's a lot more legislation in the in-college game where, kids truly are able to go and if there's free agency, just all out and out free agency, that might help him change his mind because I don't think Nick's about that.
All right.
Well, Chris, before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to plug or tell people that they can find?
No, just that I'm just hope we continue to have games, man. I think there's been a lot of publicity, attention placed on the games that haven't been played. I think 86 or 87% of the games that have been scheduled have been played. That to me is a huge success, depending on compared to where we were in August. And
yes,
we knew there were going to be stoppages and tweaks of schedules and games moved around. To me, the surprise is there haven't been more of that.
Yes,
and I think there will be a playoff. I think we will get to the point where you play the conference championship games. There'll probably be some more interruptions, some more disruptions. But I think it's a blessing that we played this many football games. And kudos to the kids. Kudos to the players and their commitment for making it happen. Kudos to the trainers and the equipment managers. Yeah, coaches get paid a ton of money, all right, and them too. But the ones starting with the players that have made this season happen and the ones on the front line, the trainers, the assistant trainers, the equipment managers, all the people that we forget about, that aren't making millions of dollars for hanging in there and the commitment to have a season. And those are the people that I think about.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us. And hopefully, sir, we can do it again soon.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. All right. Well, that was Chris Low, and welcome into the Stingray Show. We wanted to get him on first because of the breaking news out of South Carolina. But he's, you and I talked about this via text the night that it happened, and I really feel like that, if they would have beaten Ole Miss, that this would have been, we wouldn't be talking about this today.
Yeah, we asked the question all year. We kept asking, Mark Schlabach, Tony Barnhart, Dan Wolken, all the guests that we've had on the show. We've asked them over and over and over, is the coaching carousel going to start? And it was a resounding no from everybody.
Yes.
And so, deep down, I always thought, I was like, there's just too much impatience in the world today, especially in college football, especially in the SEC. And so, I was not shocked when I heard the news. I was Shocked that they did it during the season. I thought they would wait toward later in the season, but maybe South Carolina wanted to see if Bobo had the magic to turn this team around. I was listening to a podcast earlier this morning. They were talking about, did South Carolina make this move knowing that they had somebody lined up already, whether it be a Hugh Freeze or a Billy Napier or someone of that sort? Yes. And one of the hosts of that show said, yeah. And the other host said, no, I don't think that was the case at all. And that's the question I'm wondering right now. Did South Carolina, do they want to give Mike Bobo a shot to be successful in this, to hire a coach on the cheap? Or have they already talked to, a Hugh Freeze and they're ready to hire him? Like, hey, Hugh, would you come here and agree to principle in this? We saw this backfire, Stephen, against Tennessee a couple of years ago. Tennessee had a deal worked out with Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen was signed, sealed, delivered to Tennessee. And then at the last second, the Florida job pops open.
Yep.
And Dan's like, hey, sorry, thanks but no thanks. I'm heading to Gainesville. Yeah.
Yep, going to the Gators.
And look what Tennessee, they could not get a coach. I mean, Mullen was the guy. That fell through. And then they wanted to hire Schiano. There was a huge backlash. And then they had Leach, free and principal, and that fell through. And then, then the athletic director gets canned, and all of a sudden you end up with Jeremy Pruitt, who Mississippi State turned down in their job looking for a coach before they hired Joe Moorhead. I mean, that was just a crazy coaching carousel.
Yes.
So with this going on now, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I think that this move makes things a whole lot tougher at Tennessee. I really do. Does Tennessee make a move? I don't know. But I think that if Tennessee had any ideas of bringing in Hugh Freeze, and hey, let's call it what it is. It's down to one person, one single person in Knoxville. If Philip Fulmer wants Hugh Freeze, he's going to have to fire, Jeremy Pruitt. And he's going to have to do it sooner than later. And so that's the question that we need to be asking. So Hugh Freeze can kind of sit back and, he's kind of on the auction block right now. He can go to the highest bidder. That's exactly what's going to happen. So I don't think he fits in at Michigan. I think he would be successful up there, but I don't think he goes to Michigan.
No.
Chris was right. I never thought he was going to Southern Miss, although I think that would have been a great story.
Yes.
I never thought Hugh Freeze was going to Southern Miss. So, here we are, the SEC. We've got one job opening up. And this is crazy talk, and I'll be quiet after this, but here's some crazy talk. I was reading some things that the Dallas Cowboys might be interested in Dan Mullen. And I was like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. But heaven forbid, if Florida opens up, I mean, we know that the Gators love their offense. Do the Gators make a move and bring in Freeze? I mean, there's so many things that can be happening right now.
Would Dan Mullen leave the Gators, though? I mean, because that's, where he won a title with Urban Meyer. So who knows? But,
if the NFL to get back with Dak Prescott, he would hitchhike his family across the country with strangers to take the job of the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, I didn't think about that aspect of it. But, honestly, watching the South Carolina Ole Miss game, did you watch any of that?
Yeah.
I really felt like that Muschamp attacking the referee there before the halftime, that was not a good look for South Carolina nor Muschamp. However, I will say this, though. They played a great game until for some reason in the middle of the fourth quarter, they had run the ball for almost 300 yards or over 300 yards. And then all of a sudden, Bobo on one possession goes to throwing the football. They get a 3 and out. And then Ole Miss gets the ball back. You're already down. They go score. And then you're having an uphill battle from there. I really did not understand the play calling throughout the fourth quarter for South Carolina, because you had literally ran the ball all the way down the field on them the entire night. And then all of a sudden you change to passing. What are you doing?
Yeah. We've seen this in coaching. We see it in high school coaching. You see it from Pee Wee football to the NFL.
Yes.
Coaches outsmart themselves sometimes.
Yes.
And I understand the line of thinking behind it. I do. Is that, hey, we're so successful at running the ball, and it's been so easy for us. They're about to adapt to shut us down. So now I'm going to put the ball in the air.
Right.
And then, it's incomplete pass. Now it's 2nd and 10. Well, now I feel like I have to pass the ball. And then it's 3rd and 10. And you're like, well, now I've got to pass the ball.
Yes.
And that's just the craziness of
right here. This was the drive where they were like 3 and out, and the score at that point was already 45-42. And then Ole Miss eventually took advantage, went up 52-42, and then eventually 59-42 for the win. And another thing, like Chris Low said, the Gamecocks now have allowed 159 points in their last 3 games, all losses.
That's ugly. South Carolina's been dealing with a lot.
Yes.
That defense has been heavily depleted with guys opting out, with a lot with injuries. Then, you add COVID to it. That defense is heavily depleted. So, from what I've heard, they have been playing multiple walk-ons on the defensive side of the ball. But we've talked about it on the show before, Stephen. It's, you don't get less points because you scored against walk-ons. No one's giving you a break. It's a team sport. And so your depth is highly important. And when we had Hugh Freeze on the show earlier this year, Hugh Freeze mentioned it, and he said you've got to be 3 deep to compete for a championship level. You got to be 3 deep to compete for championships. So that's the thing that I've been so flabbergasted with fans is like, well, we're playing so many walk-ons on defense. Well, that's part of your, that's part of your team. That's part of your makeup. It's your coach's job to build it up 3 deep. So that's the one thing that I don't understand with South Carolina is if you're going to be playing these walk-ons, and I do have sympathy for you. You're playing walk-ons, against the Lane Kiffin offense. I mean, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. But,
Definitely.
You've got to have those guys prepared. And it looked like the walk-ons were not prepared at all. Hey, if they're just a half step slow or, they're slightly out of position, I'll give them that. But when you're going out there and you're just like, oh, well, they're going to score again. And that's kind of what it looked like. Guys wide open. Look, Elijah Moore, the best receiver on that Ole Miss team by far. It's not even in question. How does he get extremely wide open for a 91-yard touchdown play?
Yes.
That's what I don't understand is, hey, he's the best guy on the field. He's the best athlete on the field. He's their best receiver. He leads their team. How do you let that guy get that wide open for a 91-yard touchdown? I just don't understand that.
Yes. And I guess you saw the fiasco about Lane Kiffin's clipboard. That was hilarious.
That was kind of fun. And a score or two after that, because they scored every other possession, they scored almost every possession. He threw his clipboard in the stands. They had a grad assistant to run up and get the play sheet. If I'm the fan, I'm holding on to that. That's a great souvenir.
And, they're auctioning that off now. His clipboard play sheet. So that's
I hope it's the clipboard and not the grad intern.
I know, right?
Grad assistant.
So, man, I tell you what, that was definitely a barn burner of a game and very, very defense in that game. But I will say, when they had to have it, Ole Miss's defense came through to get one stop to be able to turn the ball back over to their offense.
That's putting a lot of pressure on the Ole Miss defense. That's crazy to say that you guys are just going to give us one stop for us to win.
Yes.
But, there's a lot of pressure in that, especially when it gets late into the game where, you're just trading scores right and left. That was a fun game to watch. It was kind of a video game like, and I'm a guy that likes defense. I'm all about defense, but I enjoyed watching that. But it was getting ridiculous at times. And hey, South Carolina, if you just run it to the outside, you'll score a touchdown. And that's exactly what was happening.
Plays, man.
Yeah, they would try the middle for 2 or 3 plays, and they'd get 6-8 yards. Like, okay, let's run to the outside. And it would be a touchdown every time. Yes. It was crazy.
Well, are you ready to go to, and I showed you this off the air, are you ready to go to the craziest play of the weekend? And I've got
Yeah.
to be honest with you, this is by far the craziest play I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah.
This happened in the Pac-12 After Dark, the Oregon State and Washington game, and check out this crazy punt block touchdown. I mean, this right here, the snap obviously goes way over his head. The punter then grabs it, and instead of just kicking out of the back of the end zone, he tries to kick it anyway right into the belly of the defender. Then the guy comes over here, picks it up, and rumbles into the end zone for a touchdown. However, Oregon State did eventually lose to Washington in that football game.
You know, the crazy thing, and I'll let you point it out, what you pointed out to me before the show, Stephen, during production, is that the guy that made the craziest play, the one thing that I wish that we could have seen on this play, or basically heard on this play, I would have loved to hear every player mic'd up on the field.
Yes.
I would have loved to hear everything being said by everybody.
Right. Now check out this punt returner right here, because he's down there waiting to receive the kick. Look how far he goes, all the way down here across the field. And then he is going to eventually make the game-saving block to go ahead and spring the guy into the end zone for the touchdown. That's impressive. And check out that hair.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I can do that with mine, you know.
Yeah. But dude, that one's insane. All right, let's go now to the one of the amazing catches of the week. We actually have two, and then we will go back to the highlights. Okay, so this one comes to us from the Marshall Thundering Herd, who actually won their game this past weekend on the anniversary of the plane crash. But that is an amazing catch right there. He had to tip it to himself, and then the amazing concentration to get the feet down and to catch it and to jump over the wall on the back of the end zone. Now, that's incredible.
That is incredible. You know, Stephen, I always heard that story when I was at Mississippi State, but I didn't know if it was true or not. The plane that crashed and burned that killed the football team there with Marshall, its next flight was to Baton Rouge to pick up Mississippi State to take them back to Starkville after the LSU Mississippi State game. Rick Cleveland, better known as the governor here in the hospitality state, the longtime writer for the Clarion Ledger, Rick Cleveland wrote that article earlier this week, and I'll share it here on the Stingray Show Facebook page.
Right.
But that was a phenomenal article written in detailed, talking about that whole scenario. But you know, back then, you know, we didn't have the internet and everything else that we have today, and Twitter and whatever. And Mississippi State said we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the plane, and the airline didn't know, and no one knew.
Right.
And so he said it was several hours later. And so it was a great article to read that. But, you know, how scary is that the plane you're about to board crashes right before it comes and gets you? I mean,
I know.
You know, you start thinking the good Lord and wondering why you were spared. But
yes,
yeah, that was a great catch. I got sidetracked there with the story, but I will share that story again, like I said, on the Facebook page. But yeah, what an amazing catch, and what an amazing story for the Thunder and Herd. 50 years. I mean, that wreck still affects that program to a point, but they've also been able to use it to their advantage and honor those fallen team members from back then.
Let me go on ahead and get to the number one catch of the weekend, and it is actually from the Ole Miss and South Carolina game, and it is the first touchdown, and it is with Shi Smith making a one-handed grab over in the corner of the end zone. Now, that is impressive. And then, of course, he goes up, takes his helmet off, taunts the fans, and, of course, gets a flag, as you can see right there. But watch this concentration. The defender, wow, that's impressive. A one-handed grab over the shoulder. Props to him.
Yeah, his body turned the wrong way, lays out for it. I mean, that's you'd have to check him for Stickle if I was coaching on the other sideline there. Shi Smith is the guy that should be a household name in the SEC that isn't.
Yes.
He is one of the best. If he played for Alabama, everybody would know his name.
Yeah.
Is an amazing talent, simply one of the best pass catchers in the SEC. I mean, just look at this. His body's turned the wrong way. He goes up one hand and double coverage and brings that thing down.
That's incredible. Now watch it from the back. Now, of course, he did get a toning penalty there, but it really didn't hurt because that was an amazing catch right there. One-handed, my friend.
You know, that DB's got to jam the receiver off the line, man. You just can't let John Smith keep running like that.
Man, I tell you what, that defense for Ole Miss is pretty bad right now.
Yeah, and again, Ole Miss is playing the dangerous game of, hey, just get us one stop and we'll make it work.
Yes.
Because, Matt Corral, he is known to be an interception machine at times. What was it, Arkansas? 6 picks?
7 turnovers.
Yikes.
Yep.
So, man, yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's go on ahead and talk about another game, and this one is going to be in the ACC. And Miami actually barely had enough players to make this game happen. They were down. They were down in the fourth quarter and came all the way back to win, and has now lost 7 straight games to top 10 teams. And that is really insane, especially with how long ago we had Beamer Ball and Frank Beamer, and they were a contender there for a while. Now they have lost 7 straight to top 10 teams. That's insane.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of after Liberty beat Virginia Tech a week ago is, did Hugh Freeze just, put his name at the top of the wish list for Virginia Tech fans?
Right.
I don't think that Virginia Tech's going to get a chance to do it. I think Virginia Tech has gone from a program from being great to a program that's being good.
Yes.
We saw a team like, perfect example, Mississippi State. Dan Mullen had a very hard time facing teams in the top 10 his first 3, 4, 5 seasons there in Starkville.
Right.
He was winning a lot of games, but he couldn't beat anybody in the top 10.
Yes.
So, I think that's where Virginia Tech is right now. They're going to win a lot of games, but they're not going to win these games against top 10 opponents. And, I mean, it's a 1-point loss.
Yes.
1-point loss. But, Manny Diaz, the jury's still out on Manny. I'm a big fan of Manny Diaz, and if you watch the show, you know that. But I think if Manny could just get a couple of little things, I think Manny is just like a big-time player he just needs one big-time player on each side of the ball to be a national contender. I really think that's where Manny is right now. I think he can get either a big-time playmaking receiver or quarterback and a big-time linebacker or someone in the secondary that can return kicks. If he can just get one of each of those, he's off and going.
And by the way, Miami's game for this weekend has been canceled or postponed because they don't have enough people due to injury and COVID. And you don't want to say anything because you're tired of talking about COVID.
I am tired of talking about COVID.
All right, next up is going to be a really, really amazing story in 2020, and we actually need more stories like this. Did you happen to watch the beatdown Indiana put on Michigan State?
I got to watch the highlights. Let's call this what it is, man. I don't think anybody saw Indiana coming, and you can't get out of their way. I think it's too late. I think Indiana is just going to run the gauntlet there in the Big Ten.
Don't know about that, man.
Oh, well, let me rephrase that. Run the gauntlet as far as making it the championship game.
Right. Well, do you know who they play this weekend?
Yeah, I know exactly who they play this weekend.
Ohio
Yeah.
State.
And I think it's going to be fun. I do think Ohio State's going to win, but I think it's going to be a fun game.
Yes.
But Stephen, let's just pretend this time next week we're talking about an undefeated, third-ranked Indiana football team. I mean, when's the last time Indiana been ranked third in anything, basketball included?
Yes.
I mean, this is crazy to think about, Indiana. But, I'll pull it for the Hoosiers. Why not?
And that was Indiana's first shutout over Michigan State since 1993. So my question now to you is, how bad is this Michigan team that lost to Michigan State that just got beat by Indiana?
Bad. Really bad. Super bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Ugly,
and I don't know if anybody has noticed, but let me pull myself up here. Sorry, wrong one. I've actually got a Michigan shirt back here that I just recently found in the closet. I do not know where in the world I got that, but I got a Michigan shirt back there and some Alabama memorabilia as well. So I've kind of doctored up my thing back there.
Did you find the Michigan shirt in your closet? Did you say closet or garbage can?
Closet.
Michigan fans. I heard on the radio yesterday, is Michigan the most overrated program that there is? Bo Schembechler, who was highly respected and still is, and a great coach. But, Bo never won a national title.
Right.
And so they were talking about this team's got, one national title since the 30s? And why are they considered, one of the elites in college football? And so I started asking myself that same question of, why do we view them like that? And I guess you could put a team like Georgia in that same category. I mean, one national title, and I can't remember how many years. I know 1980 is the last time they won it, but you could go back to the 30s and say, hey, Georgia's only won one national title since then. So, Michigan's bad, ugly bad, smelly bad. Just
next up is going to be an ACC game. I actually picked the upset, and if the game would have ended in the third quarter, I would have actually had the darn upset. But actually, North Carolina rallied from a 21-point deficit midway through the third quarter to go ahead and knock off the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. And this was a wild game, to say the least.
Yeah. Mac Brown, I'm not a crazy Mac Brown fan, but I highly, highly respect what Mac Brown does. Mac Brown wins football games. You could put Mac Brown anywhere. He is going to win games.
Yes.
And so, I'm not shocked at all that North Carolina's winning. I remember North Carolina, the first time Mac Brown was there, North Carolina had been terrible for years. And here comes Mac, and then he won. And I was so impressed with that. And I was actually shocked that he took the Texas job.
Right.
Why is he going to Texas? And then he won at a much higher level. But, same thing. And, hey, Steven, to drag out the last conversation, how many national championships has Texas won compared to Michigan and Georgia? I mean, they've won one title in how many years?
Yes.
So, there's a lot of programs out there that we consider powerhouses, but they've only won one title.
OU?
Yeah. Oh, OU's won more than one.
Right.
Gosh, I'm trying to think.
I know that they got one back in 2000, I think.
Yeah. You know what? I'm trying to go back in the 80s, and I'm trying to remember it. I know they played for one, but I don't think they won it. So, I do know they won some in the 70s, though. So,
by the way, just to update some news from South Carolina, J.C. Horn, their linebacker, has now opted out because of Will Muschamp not being the coach for the future. So he has opted out for the draft.
Yeah, so we've had players this year opt out because of safety. We've had players opt out because of COVID. We've had some players opt out because of their NFL draft status things. We've had some players purged from teams. And now we've got players quitting because their coach is gone. Welcome to 2020.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, man. All right, next up is going to be a real big shocker to me, and I'm sure it's going to be a shocker to you as well. Nobody saw this coming, I don't think. Penn State was ranked as high as sixth in the country to start the Big Ten season. Now, unfortunately for them and James Franklin, they are now 0-4 on the year after dropping another bad game to a bad Nebraska football team.
Mm-hmm. Indiana just exposed Penn State early in the season.
Yes.
And we didn't see that coming. And just think, Stephen, where would Indiana be and Penn State be if they didn't roll that a touchdown, that crazy play?
Yes.
A touchdown there at the pylon. But Penn State just looks lost, especially on offense. They look so incredibly bad on offense.
Yep.
I heard something today of don't be shocked if Penn State tries to go after Joe Moorhead again to kind of right the ship on offense.
Right.
And that they've slowly been on decline since Joe Moorhead left. And I was like, wow. So it's just kind of crazy to see where everything is at right now. But Penn State, that's just ugly.
And, Penn State actually did try to make a rally. There's James Franklin right there, and you can see he is just absolutely disgusted, and he has every right to be because their team is just obviously not playing up to the par that they need to for the Big Ten. And let me just go ahead and throw this stat at you. Penn State is 0-4 for only the second time in program history and the first since 2001, and they finished 2001 at 5-6.
Wow. I remember that team. Team. Joe Pa was changing his whole philosophy of his team, and Penn State fans were patient with him.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy that we were patient? College football fans were patient with their coaches. It's just crazy. But, man, Penn State is bad. Do I think James Franklin can turn around? Absolutely. I'm a massive Franklin fan. Massive. Can they do it this year?
No, probably not.
I don't know. I'll put them in the I don't know. I'm not going to put that final nail in the coffin for them in 2020, but yikes.
All right. Now let's go to another SEC game. Since we started talking about Ole Miss first, let's go to another sleepy game this past weekend. It was kind of a yawner until the fourth quarter, and then they couldn't get anything done. It is Kentucky 38, Vandy 35, and Kentucky actually went up in this game 31-14, and then Vandy rallied all the way back and then ultimately got beat because they dug themselves too big of a hole like they did again last weekend at Mississippi State.
Yeah. I'll say this about Vanderbilt. They're starting to put some things together.
Yes.
So they are. Vandy can be dangerous here in the second half of the season. And, kind of like what Chris Low said earlier in the show, what if Vandy beats Tennessee?
I know.
Yikes. But, no, Kentucky, we've talked about it all season. They're the Jekyll and Hyde team of the SEC. You never know which Kentucky team is going to show up. Looks like both of them showed up in each half of the game this week. Kentucky is just all over the place. Vanderbilt starting to pull it together, but can they make an impact? I don't know.
Now listen to this stat. Now this will get you fired pretty quick if you're Derek Mason. Vandy has now lost 10 straight SEC games. Their longest skid, the 2014-15 season, Derek Mason's first year, when they lost 11 straight games. I'm telling you, man, if he does not right the ship, I think you're going to have Vandy and South Carolina going, we need new coaches desperately in 2021.
Yeah. I still don't know if Vandy makes the pool.
Really?
Yeah. Vandy does everything different.
Right.
Everything's so different up there. But, you do have a new athletic director there. And that could mean the difference. I'll say this: Derek Mason will not have a problem getting a job. Derek Mason, one of the great defensive minds in the country. But sometimes he runs his defense, sometimes he doesn't, and Vandy's just been all over the place. One thing, Derek Mason, I guess this is the knock on him, and we've had people talk about it here on the show. He does not give his quarterbacks any time to do anything.
It's like Spurrier. It's like, okay, you can't produce out. You can't produce out.
Yeah, he doesn't try to. Yeah, and I'm just kind of like, how can you make a quarterback a drive or two, and you're just like, yeah, out, go, you're done. Yeah. It's crazy.
Let's go to the backup. Let's go to the backup right now.
Yeah, I don't understand that line of thinking, but
you're right.
Yikes.
All right, next, and by the way, Kentucky does face Alabama this weekend, and Kentucky is a 30-point underdog.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
yeah, that was the honor, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bama all the way, I do believe. All right, next up is going to be what everybody says is a dangerous team in the Pac-12, but I just don't see it, man. I have watched both of their games, and they have major issues on offense. And even Joe Klatt of Fox, who was calling this game, actually said midway through the third quarter, yikes, this USC offense is hard to watch. I will give them credit. Now, they are 2-0 after finding, a rhythm and pulling it together at the end of the games, but they are not a good elite team like you would see the USC of normal. Now, let me just go ahead and throw this up here for you. Number 11, Oregon, won their game against Washington State by 14. That is what people would call a blowout, okay? They're taking care of business. They're exposing the teams that are below them, and they're doing it what they're supposed to do. Look at the score of the USC game. They are barely eking by teams that they are supposed to beat. Now, let me say this. Going forward, if I'm a USC fan, I am really concerned about how they're barely beating teams like Arizona State and Arizona, teams that they should be beating because of, recruiting alone by 20 or 30 points.
Yeah, USC, I don't know if they're still trying to put it together or if they're just bad. I lean toward bad.
And look, to your point, they should still not be putting it together with how long Clay Helton has been there at that university. Okay, this is not like they're in year number 1 or number 2. They're going on a lot longer with Clay Helton, so you may actually see them open up if things do not get better and they actually start losing a little bit.
Here's something fun for the boys and girls at home to do. Google Clay Helton and recruiting and see if he's missing on these guys recruiting. I mean,
yes.
So JT Daniels has left. He's at Georgia now. Is it one of these things where Clay Helton is getting all these 4- and 5-star athletes and they're not panning out?
Right.
Or is he just a bad coach, or is he bringing guys in that don't complement his system? I mean, I don't know the answer. I really don't. Maybe Google does, but I'm shocked to see USC just kind of stumble along.
Yes. And just like, well, we got about 2 minutes left. We're about to lose. Let's turn it on just like that now. Oh, hey, we won.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. The offense is still trying to find itself. Do they want to be a running team? Do they want to be a throwing team? It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, it is a nightmare. It is a bad nightmare.
But with that, I will say I really do feel like things are on the uptick for the Arizona Wildcats because, they really had a lot of issues the past few years with Khalil Tate and some players wanting to play, not wanting to play. they have found themselves a little quarterback right there in number 17. And I do believe this upcoming week, I think that they finally get over the skid of losing 8 straight games. I think they actually find a way to win this weekend and get everything going positive for Kevin Sumlin out there.
Kevin Sumlin needs anything positive right now.
Yes.
You know, his name's starting to pop up of some folks being unhappy, but yeah, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But Kevin Sumlin needs help. And,
yes.
Does he get it? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out. All right, next up is going to be a pretty good little team, and unfortunately, all of the Missouri fans were throwing shade at Barry Odom's ability to coach this football team this past weekend as Florida destroyed Arkansas without Sam Pittman on the sideline. Florida 63, Arkansas 35. And let me also throw this nugget at you. Dan Mullen is now 26-6 through 32 games as Florida head coach. The same record that Spurrier and Urban Meyer had. And both of those guys won national championships with Florida.
Yeah, Mullen is still one dominant player shy on the offense.
Yes.
Of getting it. Tyler Grantham on the defense haven't been doing it this year, but offense has picked up the slack.
Right.
Tyler Grantham, one of the greatest defensive minds that the SEC has ever seen. You know, but he's not that defense is just not performing at a high level this year. And I don't know the answer to why. But give it up for Mullen. He's making it happen, which we all knew you'd win down there.
Right.
You know, but man, Mullen's one Heisman Trophy winning Heisman contention player away from just dominating college football. He really is.
And I think he's got it in Kyle Trask.
I don't know. Cal is wonderful, and Cal is up there as far as that. But could you imagine if a Justin Fields or a Mac Jones or someone of that nature was playing quarterback? Let's up our Liberty friends. Malik Willis.
Yes.
But if Mullen had a superstar quarterback,
right.
And I'm not knocking Cal Trask. I am not knocking him whatsoever. Cal Trask, if the Heisman's being voted on today, Cal Trask has won it.
Yes.
Hands down and by a landslide.
Because Alabama didn't play last weekend.
Yes. But, you just don't see somebody that's just taking over that Florida offense. But, man, I tell you, Dan Mullen's offense is the spread option. It's fun to watch. It really is.
And what's scary is that they put up 63 points without Kyle Pitts on the field.
Yeah, that is crazy. Mullen usually has a great dominant running back. He doesn't have that this year.
No, they're too one-dimensional right now. But I still feel like they can cause problems for Alabama and Atlanta, though.
Hey, Stephen, here's a crazy question, and we won't go far on this one. Let's just say Dan Mullen takes the Cowboys job and Hugh Freeze ends up at Florida. I mean, how crazy would things be in the SEC East? I mean, that's going to leave Tennessee still out in the cold.
Yes.
Wanting
Kirby Smart at Georgia.
Yeah. Things heating up at Georgia. Hugh Freeze at Florida. Hugh Freeze can recruit. We know this. I mean, we see what he's doing at Liberty. We saw what he did at Ole Miss. But could you imagine him with the resources at Florida and South Florida? Wow.
And especially with Florida State not doing well.
Yeah. I mean, it just fun things to think about. I don't think Dan Mullen's going to the Cowboys, though.
No. Next up, now let me ask you this. Is this not signature 2020 right here? SMU was up 21-0 in the second quarter over Tulsa. Tulsa comes all the way back and beats SMU, a ranked football team. Now, let me throw this nugget at you. In 2019, Tulsa had a 21-point lead and lost it 43-37 in the 3 overtimes. And then this year, SMU leads by 21 and they end up losing. That's insane.
That is insane. That is insane. That's why we watch sports. That's why we watch college football. It's for things like that. That's what we all want to see. If all the crazy storylines and the crazy stats and the crazy games. That's what makes college football.
Dude, do not sleep on that Tulsa team right now because they're sitting there at 4-1 right now.
Yeah. Tulsa's a great team. Tulsa's a really good team.
And if nobody remembers this, but week 1 of college football for the Big 12, Tulsa went toe-to-toe with the Kings right now of the Big 12, Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
In Stillwater.
We should reach out to Dari Noka. He's a Tulsa grad.
Yes.
Dari from SEC Network. If Tulsa keeps winning, maybe we should reach out to Dari and have him on and let him brag about his Golden Hurricane.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, next up is going to be, and this is going to be the last highlight of the day. Man, I've got to show it. You know what's coming, don't you?
I think I do.
What?
Bring it on up. Khaki pants.
Wisconsin 49, Michigan 11. Now get this stat, okay? Get this stat, Heath. Wisconsin running up a 28-0 lead at halftime was the largest deficit Michigan has faced at home since 1927.
When we had Brock Ewart on the show last week, he said it. Other people have said it. I can't remember who else said it. It was another writer. I think it was Dan Wolken, maybe. That Jim Harbaugh, it will be his decision to leave Michigan, not Michigan's decision.
I disagree with that now.
I don't know, man. I don't know what to think. What's going on up there at Michigan? Everything at Michigan just seems to be weird right now.
Yes.
And it just didn't start. It's been getting weirder, more weird each and every year.
And it seems like it all started when Appalachian State knocked off Lloyd Carr's Michigan football team. After that, it's been ever since.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because
Brady Hogue, Rich Rod, and now khaki pants, and
it just
it's just got worse and worse and worse.
Right.
And we did see a little uptick with Mr. Khaki Pants, but they thought Shea Patterson was going to be the answer when he transferred out of Ole Miss, and that didn't work. And so it's slowly gotten worse and worse and worse up there. But in Harbaugh's defense, and I'm not making excuses for him, but he had a lot of players opt out before the season. He's had a lot of issues with that, but they're not making this happen. And so it's just kind of crazy to see this whole scenario play out in front of us. But I'd like to see Khaki Pants there. I think Khaki Pants is great for college football, but I think by 2022 he's in the NFL.
Yeah, not doing that, man. And the longer that he loses like this, I really feel like his stock's going down for the NFL.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. We'll find out. I'll say this: just like there's desperate college football teams, there's even more desperate NFL teams.
Yeah.
How 2020 would this be that Jim Harbaugh is the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys? That would be a disaster.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, Heath, do you have anything else to add before we sign off on this Tuesday edition of the Stingray Show?
No, we got a fun interview tomorrow. I won't tell you who it is that we'll line up for later this week.
Should I tell them?
No, let's don't tell them. Let's keep them guessing a little bit.
Okay.
But I want to heavily thank Chris Low. I think Chris Low is an extreme class act. I want to thank him for joining us on the show today. I also want to give a shout out to, the good people that have always helped us on this show and made it what it is. So, Stephen, also a shout out to you. You're the ones that's been doing all the highlights. So, hey, thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. And I was just checking because a tweet popped up on my thing from our friend Brandon Marcello. And so he says that the Rose Bowl is flexible with moving the semifinal dates, and that is per Dennis Dodd. So we might actually have a few, flexibility issues with the college football playoff due to the COVID pandemic, unfortunately.
I'm okay with that.
So games being canceled, games being played. And one more note, like I said, I meant to ask Chris Low this, but we just ran out of time. The Ole Miss and Texas A&M game for this upcoming weekend has been postponed. So what does Ole Miss do in the meantime? We'll find that out later this week.
Right.
And it could be LSU or the Egg Bowl upcoming. So, when we start the show on Friday, we could have some interesting news, to say the least. So stay tuned only on the Stingray Show for all of the breaking news and everything else. So, guys, we really want to thank you guys for tuning into the Stingray Show. If you would like to watch the preview or the show again, or if you missed any part of it, you can watch it on my Facebook page, or you can watch it on my YouTube channel or the Twitter account at Stephen Ray 30, Facebook Stephen Stingray Ray, and on YouTube Stingray 26. Until next time, have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and as always, God bless.
The Dogs and Stingray are coming for you!
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn.
Worst defense ever!
So without further ado, here is the biggest. Going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes.
Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings. He's got it. Jennings. He's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee! They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium! Are you kidding me? My God almighty! What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia